So last night I saw The Prodigy, and it was kind of a mixed bag. It was directed by Nicholas McCarthy, who has also brought us films like The Pact or At the Devil's Door, which were actually for the last 10 years pretty memorable entries in the horror genre. And this time he takes us into the possessed scary kid territory. It is a film that is very much comparable to movies like Mikey back in the 90s, or even better, The Omen back in the 80s. It follows that vein of film. The process of how the viewing experience goes is pretty chunky to explain. Like, you already establish the premise of the whole entire movie in the first couple of seconds, and since all the characters in them have very standard roles, we have Taylor Schilling playing Sarah Bloom and Peter Mooney playing John Bloom, freshly married couple just getting their first kid. Their characters are a bit generic, and that is why you've pretty much established everyone in this movie like in about 10 minutes. And the first 30 minutes of the film really work well. They seem frightening. There is something gloomy going on with the kid, and definitely this kid, he brings out, like, for a child actor, an incredible performance. Like, most child actors, you don't really buy anything that they're saying, but this kid, this Jackson Robert Scott, that's his name, he plays Miles Bloom, he does an amazing job. But the problem starts in the middle of the movie. When you're 30 minutes in and you have already established the problem, the audience knows exactly what is happening to the kid, you have established the characters, and then it sort of just reaches this kind of a halt in its suspense, because you sort of know exactly what's going to be happening, and when you're midway through the film, you already know how this whole entire thing is going to end. And that is like, it is just so predictable that when the end finally then sets in, you're sort of left wondering why I bothered with this at all. And I don't think this would have been the case if this film would have come out at another time. If The Prodigy would have been released in 1996 or 1997, we would have like one of the biggest hits of its time on our ass right now. But The Prodigy came out in 2019, sort of 23 years too late, when movies like this have been established and they have become somewhat predictable, and we know pretty much exactly what is going to happen. Another thing that doesn't really do the movie any favors is that it's one of those films that completely shuts off all kind of comedic relief and tries to put you in this constant state of bleakness. It is actually almost funny how hard The Prodigy tries to keep the serious, bleak tone throughout the entire film, and at a point it just somehow becomes simply exhausting. You're not in the mood to go through all of this, but you know, that's just me. Some people love completely bleak, super serious movies, and as you might have guessed, cinematography is pretty much held in the exact same way. It kind of reminded me of the cinematography in The Ring. You have like this incredibly bright white constantly going on with a bit of gray. It's sort of like a very bright rainy day. That is how The Prodigy generally looks like. All in all, it sets up some very good ideas. Actually, also some very creative ways of storytelling. For example, the scene in the psychiatrist scene. I thought that was beautifully shot and brilliantly edited. And then somehow fails because it just lacks surprises and it lacks interesting characters, which is really too bad because this had a lot of potential. And I'm not saying that this movie sucks complete balls. The person who watched it with me thought it sucked complete balls, but I didn't. I just think it came out at a wrong time, and it needed just a bit more surprises to do what it set out to do. Too bad. Well, so this movie, it ain't good, but it ain't shit either. So like, give it a watch if you're interested, but if you skip this one, you're really not missing out on a lot. Yeah. That's The Prodigy.